This next topic is using function notation to evaluate functions. When I first introduced functions, we already talked about this. This is where I said, what is f of 3? And the idea was if you had a machine and you plugged in the number 3, you throw the number 3 into the machine, the idea is what comes out. Okay, that's what function notation is. It's saying plug in 3. Okay, the big thing to know here is that number that you plug in is for x, the independent variable. The number that comes out, which is the number they want, is y, the dependent variable. Again, we don't have to use x's and y's, but that's typically what we use in this class. When we go to application problems, we might use more different letters, things like T for time, or H for height, or S for position. Why do they use S? No idea, but that's what they tend to use, okay? So we might use different letters, but the idea with function notation is input this value, tell me what comes out. So that is function notation. The idea is instead of saying y equals, we say f of x equals. The reason that we're saying f of x is we are declaring explicitly, very clearly, what is the input variable, what is the output variable. Okay, so whatever's in there, f of is how you read that, f of x, f of 3 means the input variable is x, you plug in 3 for x, tell me what the output is. And this is called function notation, and when you plug in the number and you get it out, that's called the function value. So let's take a look at this real quick. Example number 9, it says evaluating a function. Find the values of f of x equals x squared minus 5x plus 1 when x is 0, negative 1, 4, and x plus h. I really want you to concentrate on the x plus h version of this, and I really, really want you to concentrate on example 10 from this one. You might have seen these problems in a college algebra course, but these are something that you are going to see in the first week or two of calculus. So plugging in numbers, we're always going to have to do it, but what's huge with calculus is this x plus h thing and something called the difference quotient. So let's work through these together. So again, we have f of x equals x squared minus 5x plus 1 when x is 0, negative 1, 4, and x plus h. Well, let's do the first one together. Let's try f of 0. And if I look at f of 0, I'm saying wherever I have an x, I'm just going to put in parentheses wherever I have an x, and then I just plug in the number 0. So f of 0 would be wherever there's an x, I plug in 0. You simply use your calculator to plug this in. F of 0, see what you're getting. I'm getting the number 1 in this case. So f of 0 would be equal to 1. I would come over here. F of 0 is equal to 1. When I plug a 0 into the function, I get a 1 out, okay? Now there's f of negative 1 and f of 4. We're going to do the exact same thing, but what I want to do really here is teach you a different way of doing this, okay? We have a calculator, the TI-30XS Multi-View is the calculator that I'm using. And I'm going to tell you which buttons I want you to push. I want you to hit the table button. Sorry, let me get this to a pen. I want you to hit the table button to start. And once you hit the table button, I want you to clear off any button that you have, anything that you have there, I want you to clear it out. So just hit that clear button. And now I want you to type in your function. So the function in this case is x squared. And if you notice, the x button, if you're looking for the x button, it looks something like this. It has an x and then it has a bunch of different letters written right there. So that's how you get x. Right above it's the squared button. Then I'm going to do minus 5x. And then I'm going to do plus 1. So I'm going to do all of this on my calculator. I enter that in, so that's what it looks like on my calculator. So on my calculator right now, my screen says y equals x squared minus 5x plus 1. That's what it looks like on my calculator, and I hit enter. Okay, and you're going to go to the next screen. Here's what I want your next screen to look like. Your next screen, I want it to say start. I don't care what this says because we're going to type in our own numbers. Step, I don't care what this says. Mine's at 1. But then you have auto, and you have ask X. And this is the one that I want you to box, and then I want you to click on OK. So make sure that ask X is selected, hit OK, enter for OK. And now the beautiful thing is we get to type in whatever number we want to this function. So this is the table feature of the calculator. So now we're just going to enter X values. Enter X values. Okay, enter those x values. So I'm going to enter 0, I'm going to hit 0 and hit enter, and if you notice, the y value is 1. So let me show you what this looks like. You have a chart, it says x and then it has y, and remember, we got y by plugging it into x squared minus 5x plus 1. When I plug in 0 and I hit enter, it immediately tells me my y value is 1. When I plug in -1 and hit enter, it tells me my y value is 7, and then when I plug in 4 and hit enter, it tells me my y value is -3. So using this table feature gives me answers very, very quick for these problems. This was 7, this was -3. Gives me the answers very, very quick to these problems if I have to plug in multiple numbers. Also really helps me with negatives, plugging in negatives, because a lot of you forget parentheses with the negatives. And if you use the table feature on your calculator, you're never going to have issues with this plugging in a negative thing and forgetting the parentheses. Okay? So the one thing that our calculator can't do, it's really good at plugging in numbers, but it can't plug in things like this, the x plus h, and that's really, really important that we need to do. So let's go ahead and do that together and see what I'm talking about. What is f of x plus h? I'll do it up here. F of x plus h. Well, that says, look back at the original function, which was x squared minus 5x plus 1. And anywhere, remember, anywhere we see an x, we are now plugging in x plus h. So let me go in here. It was x squared minus 5 times x plus 1. That's what it was, but now the idea is anywhere I saw an x, instead I'm going to plug in x plus h. Okay, so now I need to do some algebra here to simplify it. I'm going to distribute this out, this first x plus h squared. Remember, you can't just take this 2, this power of 2, and distribute it to both of these. It doesn't work that way because there's addition. So we actually have to FOIL this out. So this is really x plus h times x plus h. So I need to do my first outer inner last. And if you get this, and you're going to get really good at this because you're going to FOIL a lot this semester, you're going to end up with x squared. Then you're going to have plus xh plus xh, so that's 2xh, and then you have plus h squared. So that's what x plus h quantity squared is. The next thing that I need to do is take this -5 and distribute it through to the x and the h. So that's going to be minus 5x, and then it would be minus 5 times h, so that's minus 5h, and then I still have that plus 1, right? Okay. So to me, that is our answer. I try to see, can I combine any like terms? And the answer is no. Nothing's truly a like term here. I have x's and h's. I have x squareds, h squareds, but nothing actually matches. So this is what the final answer would be for f of x plus h. F of x plus h would be this answer right here. X squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 5x minus 5h plus 1. I know that looks a mess right now, but what I'm telling you is it's going to simplify from there. This is just one part of a multiple step problem that you're going to be doing in calculus. That's the first step of the problem. So let's look at example 10 because this really drives home what we're going to be doing in a calculus course. And we're going to be doing this in the first week or two, so you definitely need to know how to do this. It says, given f of x equals x squared plus 7, find the difference quotient. So what is the difference quotient? The difference quotient is f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. There's a couple different ways that I can do this. I could do this in 3 steps. The first step would be finding f of x plus h. The second step would be finding f of x plus h minus f of x and simplifying. And then the third step would be dividing it by h. So I could do it in 3 separate steps, or I could do it all together. Totally up to you with how you want to do it. In fact, I'll do it both ways to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Let's start off with doing it in 3 separate steps. The first step is finding f of x plus h. So what is f of x plus h? To find f of x plus h, what I do is I plug in wherever I see an x, so it's x squared plus 7. So I'm going to put parentheses where there's an x, squared plus 7, and I'm just going to plug in the x plus h. Now here I most definitely do want to FOIL that out. So remember that it's x plus h times x plus h. Don't try to distribute that power of 2. You actually need to FOIL here. So that would be x squared plus, well, it would be xh and xh, so that would be 2xh. And then I'd have plus h squared. And then don't forget that plus 7. A lot of people forget that plus 7. So this is what f of x plus h is. That's my first step right there. The second step is to find f of x plus h, what I just found. I'm going to subtract off f of x, which is the original function. So take what you just found. What we just found was x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 7. That's f of x plus h. And then I'm going to subtract off the original function. And the original function was x squared plus 7. So what I want to emphasize here is that you most definitely want to put parentheses around that f of x. The reason being is we have to distribute that negative to both terms. So let's see what we would have on the next line. I'd have x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 7. Distributing the negative, I'd have minus x squared. Distributing the negative, I'd have a minus 7, okay? That's really important because what should happen and does happen is you're always going to get those f of x terms to cancel out if you did it properly. So the x squared minus x squareds cancel, and the 7 minus 7 cancel. So what am I left with? I'm left with 2xh, let me write this in black, 2xh plus h squared. So that's step 2. I've now found f of x plus h minus f of x. And then I said step 3, the third step that we're going to be doing is simply dividing that by h. Take everything that you've done and divided it by h. So what we ended up with was 2xh, sorry, let me write this in black, 2xh plus h squared. We divide that by h. How do we do that? Well, you can't just cross out the h's right now. Remember, you can only simplify if it's a factor. So we actually have to factor it first. So looking in the numerator, I'd have to factor out an h. Factoring out an h, I'd have h times, well, 2xh divided by h is 2x, and h squared divided by h is just h. So that's the factored version of the numerator, h times 2x plus h, all divided by h. Now that it's factored, I'm able to simplify. Simplify those h's, they simplify into a 1, and I'm left with 2x plus h. So there's my final answer there using the 3-step process. The 3-step process, again, first thing is find f of x plus h. Second process is take that answer, subtract off the original function, always remember parentheses and distribute the negative. And then the third step would be divide all of that by h. Let me show you a second way of doing this. So my second way of doing this, I'll do this all in black. That's perfectly fine. I'll do it in black. But let me show you the second way of doing this. So for the second way of doing this, I'm going to do it all at once. So I'm literally going to find f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Okay, so let's find f of x plus h minus f of x all over h all at once. So here's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to kind of color coordinate it for you. I'm going to find f of x plus h, that's the blue part, minus f of x, and that's the red part all over h. And that's, I mean, it's just h, but I put it in green here just to show you what it looks like when I put it all together. So let's find the blue part first, which is f of x plus h. Again, our original function here was x squared plus 7. So instead of an x, I'm going to plug in x plus h. So that would be x plus h squared plus 7. So that's the f of x plus h part. Then I'm going to subtract off the original function, which is f of x. Well, the original function is just x squared plus 7. Notice that has to be in parentheses. I have to remember to distribute the negative. And then this is all over h, which is just h, the bottom of that function. So there's f of x plus h minus f of x all over h in one step. Okay. Now I don't have to do it in 3 separate steps, but the algebra is a lot uglier when you do it like this. So working on the blue, again, we would have to expand out that blue. So we'd have to take x plus h quantity squared, which is x plus h times x plus h. We'd have to FOIL that out. Again, foiling that, we would have had x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. That's foiling out the x plus h squared. And then we have the plus 7. So that's my blue part all cleaned up. Then I have the minus, and I still have that x squared plus 7. Again, those brackets are parentheses, same exact thing mathematically in this case, what we're talking about. And this is all over h, which is the green part. Okay, now I need to start my simplification. I need to remember that I have to distribute that negative to both parts in the numerator. So I have x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus 7. Then distributing the negative, I'd have my minus x squared, and I'd have a minus 7. A lot of students mess up there because they put a plus 7, and it doesn't cancel out as it should. Every time, your last part should cancel out if you have a simple quadratic like this. So x squareds cancel, 7s cancel, and I'm left with 2xh plus h squared. That's all over h. Again, we can't simplify unless we factor first, so I'd factor that numerator as h times 2x plus h. The only reason I'm going so fast is because we already did this just to the left. It's mathematically equivalent. The h's simplify, and I end up with 2x plus h. So this is what it looks like, exact same, if I do everything all at once. And you're free to do that. The only warning that I have, if you want to do everything all at once, is you got to be really careful with your distributing the negative. So make sure you have those parentheses there. Make sure you FOIL properly. It's just a lot handling all at once. So there's the campus students who like doing it in 3 separate steps so they can double check, watch their algebra, do it a little slower. And then there's the students who just want to get the problem done and do it all at once. I would accept both of these on the test as work. It's totally up to you. Honestly, when I first start it, I start practicing by doing the 3 individual steps, but by the end of the semester, without a doubt, I'm on the right-hand side doing it all at once because I've done it so many times that I have the confidence. So see where you fit in that. Choose either way to do it. 3 steps, all at once, your choice.